ideally, she wouldn't be washed, but today she is. We'll get her taken care of. So first I'm going to go over some of the tools that we would use. A lot of people have already asked about this stand. This stand came from Switzerland. I don't really care what stand you use. I also have another breed of sheep, and I would never put those on this stand because the headpiece doesn't work for them. So it just depends what your sheep are used to, what works for you. It doesn't matter. It's going to hold them still, and that's what you need. Worst case scenario, you can tie them to a gate and have somebody else kind of be your other side if you don't have a stand. I've sheared sheep like that before too. Normally, if you're shearing a lot of sheep, you're going to contact the fine guys down there. I am not strong enough to do that. My dad did that for years and years and years, put them all on their butts. I am not strong enough to do that. I also do not enjoy being stabbed by horns in the leg, so I can shear a sheep on the stand pretty quickly. That's how I get it done. We do still have a shearer come out to do the brood use, though. I'm not doing all of them by myself. So this does take longer, but if you have a small flock of sheep, perfectly fine. So let's talk about like the other tools, the trimming stand, some sort of device to keep them captured, whatever that may be. This is a hoof trimming demonstration also. This is my favorite hoof trimmers. They kind of look like a pruning shears more than anything. The red handled ones are probably going to be the sharpest and stay the sharpest. I've also used the orange handled ones. They're perfectly fine. There's also some metal ones that are a little bit shorter and wider. Work better on like really thick hooves. You can get some more wolf to them. So these would be probably the preferred type of hoof trimmer. Let's talk about some other supplies. I use several different types of clippers. This one, whoops. Yeah, it works best when it's plugged in, that's right. So this one is a Premier. I honestly don't even know what it's called. Premier 4000, apparently. You can switch off the blades on there. This is, I think this one is a 24 tooth straight. They also make them that have these like flared edges. The flared edges keep the fleece coming to you. Way easier to cut them though. So I use these straight sided ones. So that's the comb and that's the cutter. When I first started shearing, especially after my dad passed away, this is the problem. I had no idea how to put this together. I had the comb, I had the cutter, I had the clippers, and I'm like, I used to just hand these to my dad, and he put it together and said, here you go. There are actually some pretty good videos now. I think Premier actually has videos on exactly how to set these. My recommendation is always to check this bevel that comes this way, and you want to stay this way of that bevel. Never want to go past that. That's what keeps the flat surface to cut. But Premier has good videos on how to set it. So there's two big screws in the back that keep everything together. This is the screwdriver that comes with it from Premier. I also have this one that's got like different sized ends on it. This thing's probably older than me. But that's what you use on these to keep everything tight. The other part that you're going to adjust is this knob here. That's the tension knob that keeps the comb and the cutter together. You don't want it too tight because then there's a ton of pressure on there. I think that on the Premier thing it says tighten it and then another half or quarter turn just to keep it tight enough so your blades aren't going to fly out of there. Occasionally when I'm shearing along and not paying attention very well with what I'm doing, on my other trimming stand I'll catch the chain that goes around the back of their neck, and I have multiple times pulled the comb off the screw. It makes a god-awful noise, and then you have to take everything and put it back together. So that is one thing that can happen, is if you hit something too hard or jam it into something, it's going to screw up your alignment and you got to start all over. So like I said, there's a need for oil since we washed her and the lanolin's gone. Seriously, just go borrow your husband's motor oil. That is exactly what is in here. This is the same stuff that goes in your truck. This, you can't really get much better, to be honest. If it's good enough for the motor, it's good enough for your clippers. So that's why your clippers are always dirty, because of the oil. but I literally just put a bunch of oil right on there. I like to turn them on, let them do its thing, do it again. Make sure that that stays nice and lubricated. So there's also another hole here. Oil can go in there too. This bottle, mustard bottle, ketchup bottle, also works very, very well. I kind of have like a real problem with buying a lot of mustard and ketchup bottles because I am constantly breaking or losing these. So that works really good. Steer your husband's motor oil. And then if you're fancy, this would be more for if you're trying to keep them extra clean for whatever reason. It's a clipper lubricant and coolant. So the longer you use a clipper, it builds up heat there. So this helps to dissipate some of that heat. Looks like a bottle of hairspray. Spray it on there really well. Works the same, a little bit cleaner because it's clear, same purpose. If I'm not using those Premier clippers, the other clipper I like is the Shear Master. They're a yellow product. They look yellow, and I think they're from Oster. Very, very sturdy product. Again, I have 2 or 3 different pairs of those. I like to keep, when I'm doing multiple things, I like to keep one clipper with one blade and another clipper with a different blade. Sometimes your smaller blades like around the face, so you're not going to cut something. Some people will use like a 13-tooth comb on the body and then switch out to something else, but you got lots of different options. I think that covers kind of the equipment. There's really no right or wrong way to get this fleece off because we're not likely to be saving this fleece for any particular purpose. When they sit a sheep down on its butt, they're going to take the belly wool, get rid of all of that because it's not useful. They're going to try and get the rest of that fleece off in one piece. That is not going to happen on the stand because we're upside down. I'm starting at the top, going to the bottom. Sure, you can keep the fleece, but that's not really how a good fleece works. Again, she's been washed. This fleece isn't any good anyway. So I'm actually going to start with hoof trimming. Let's start with that. She did have her hoofs trimmed before the show, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to take off, but I can still kind of show you how to get them in the correct position for that. Doesn't matter which foot you start with. I'm just going to start with one of the back ones here so that you can see. I always like to let them know that I'm here so you don't scare them. Sometimes people will get them used to being touched on their legs. She's really used to that because she's been shown a few times. So she should be pretty good. So when I'm extremely right-handed, so I try and do everything that way. So when I do this side, I'm just going to use my elbow to kind of pivot on her butt. And I'm going to pick up that foot. And I'm not going to pick it up clear back here. I'm going to leave it low because that's more natural for her. And then I'm going to use my finger to flip those hooves up. So all in one big motion, pick up those feet. So on her, you can see a little bit about what's been taken off and what's still there. The first place I look is this heel area. Sometimes they can have a ton of overgrowth on that heel, and that can all go. So she does have just a little overgrowth right there. So I'm going to get rid of that, and maybe just a little bit right there. So you're trying to make everything flat. So then I look at the hoof wall all the way around. Again, doesn't matter where you start. I usually start on the end, just make a little piece on the end, and then kind of come around, and again, making everything flat. It's best if you're learning to take off small pieces at a time. Most people that have never seen hooves trimmed before would probably have a heart attack if they watched how I trim hooves, because I take off big chunks at a time. So what I'm looking for, if you can see that white line, that's a good indicator that you're where you need to be. And then you're also looking real close down here. I can see the blood vessels, not really vessels, little tiny amounts of blood underneath there. So I don't want to get any deeper. Also, when you look, things are smooth. The hoof wall is touching my hand. The toes are short, and everything's fairly symmetrical. So I'm just going to do this one real quick. When I go to move on this side, again, elbow in the booty, lift up that foot, let her lean against me. So I'm just taking off some little pieces because, like I said, she's had her feet trimmed pretty recently. So no big deal. You can use the hoof trimmer. You'll see me go this way, see me go this way, flip it over. You can use it any direction. Nice and smooth. So that's the back feet. Front feet, I always think this side's the hardest for me because I am right-handed. So I've got to reach over and get a hold of it with my left hand and then try and do it with my right hand. So again, let her know that you're here. And then I just grab, and on the front foot, you're going to have to get a little bit more aggressive about it because you got to get that up to you. So then I usually use this elbow to keep her in position. And then cut the sides, cut the tip. Again, this is not nearly as impressive as if it's one that's been 6 months ago, but we can still take some off. Then I always like to make sure that those toes are nice and square at the end, because when they put their foot back down, especially on show sheep, they just think it makes it look nicer when that toe is just nice and square up front instead of a pointy toe sticking out. Okay, anybody have any questions about hoof trimming first? Go ahead.
I see you're using these clippers. Why do you preference those over like a hoof floss?
Yeah, so these are the ones that I feel stay the sharpest, the longest.
Versus the hoof floss.
For sure. Yep. I can take off big pieces at a time. Yeah. I think that these are most efficient for me. And that just depends on what you want to use. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So these have just been good for us. Those branch-handled ones, I think that they work fairly well, but I've noticed that they tend to warp. Like if you get in there with a really big hard hoof and give it a good hard click, then the next time you use it, you're like, oh, that doesn't cut very well at all. So.
Now, one more question. As you're in that hoof, at the top of the hoof, you know how sometimes you get that pinhole?
Yeah.
You're turning that all the way through so that pinhole's gone, correct?
Yeah, you do not want to leave anything that looks like something can get in it. So if you have a sheep with a defect in that hoof wall, you're going to want to trim and smooth everything up. Sometimes even if you have to make it bleed, because it's never going to grow back correctly if a bunch of manure or rocks or whatever is getting in there. Hers is kind of a poor example because hers are smooth, so nothing's trapped. But usually the first thing I do is take the tips of these and dig all that junk out of there. Dig that out of there so you can see what you've got. Then I usually do that outside hoof wall, peel that out, and then look to see, okay, is this a disaster or is this just a regular hoof trim?
When you do make them bleed, which I'm sure we all
do
that before, what's your protocol after? What do you like to do after?
So it kind of depends. I'd say 99% of the time I let them bleed, and they're fine. Occasionally, if you're trying to treat some sort of problem, like if they've got an abscess or something, they've stepped on something, sometimes what I'll just do is pack it. So put like a gauze wrap on there, and then that wrap around it, just leave it on for a day or two, just to try and keep the crap out of it. So that nope, because they're just gonna walk it off most of the time. I make hooves bleed all the time. Probably shouldn't admit that, but I do. And nobody's ever died from a hoof trim. So.
Well, I have to give you out here Thursday.
Oh, yeah. The other recommendation, this ewe, like I said, she had her hooves trimmed probably 2 to 3 weeks ago. I try to stay way up off the show if I can help it. Sometimes I'll do a little retouching closer to the show, but that's just really fine pieces that I'd be doing. So yeah, I've done the same thing a week before the show and the thing's still limping. It happens. It happens. Any other questions about hoof trimming?
How frequently do you trim?
So show sheep, I always trim before shows. Normally I would only trim hooves twice a year when we shear. Sometimes you've got one or two that'll just grow hoof like crazy, and you can really tell. But I seem to grow hoof quite well, but twice a year still seems to be enough. Yeah, they don't have to look pretty in the.
Doing it twice a year you find that you're taking a lot off?
Oh, for sure. A ton. Yep. I'll be taking big chunks off the outside of the hoof wall. Yep. They really, like when you look at that hoof, I always tell people a hoof should be 2 fingers. Is probably all a hoof needs to be. So the rest of it is overgrowth. Yep. Anything else? We're going to dive into some shearing then. Okay. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way. I just kind of start somewhere and go. You got to start somewhere. The way you have to be cognizant of lots of things that other sheep you wouldn't. Number one being this thing, the tail. I found the tail is kind of a pain to shear. And the other thing you really have to pay attention to is the horns. Those can knock your blades loose. They can do all kinds of things. So there are some things that are different depending on which breed of sheep you're shearing. Very first recommendation is to figure out if you are shearing a ram or a ewe or a wether. And you can probably see the obvious reason why. You don't want to be shearing along that belly and then all of a sudden discover that you cut his pee-pee. They don't really like that. So this is a ewe. We don't have to worry about that. Other thing you've got to worry about on ewes is to know if they're pregnant. You got to watch for the udder. We don't need to cut off a teat. That doesn't work very well either. Or if they're ewes that are open that have had lambs, sometimes they'll have a saggy udder left over that is still an obstacle when you're trying to shear. This ewe's never lamb, so we don't have to worry about that. So typically I try to get them in a halfway normal position because that means their skin is all stretched out normal versus when they're standing on the stand like this, makes them have wrinkles and then you're going to cut off a wrinkle. So I got a couple places to start. Right here is a good place to start because you can see it, it's easy to get to, it's flat, and you can get yourself used to shearing. I also sometimes will start on the shoulder just because you can really get in there and go different directions. This stand, I like these little things to help. They help keep the sheep on the stand. They do not help your shearer because you're constantly having to go around them, getting your cord stuck in them. Love-hate relationship with those things. So I'm just going to shear for a little while, and if I think of something as I go, I will interrupt myself and show you kind of what I found. So like I said, I start kind of up here. Make sure my clippers are working. These need to be tightened. Yeah, now we're working. And I try to find myself a path first. So see how I'm pulling it away so I can see what's happening here. Alright. So I went from kind of a tail up to her neck, and then I stop before I get to her neck because her neck is super wrinkly. So now I'm going on pass number 2. And this is similar to what they would do if you're on the floor, except I'm on the stand. So the long blows that they call them when they're doing a shearing competition, I do those first instead of at the end. That's gotta feel much better, girl. It's hot. Okay, so I kind of just made a big mess over here, but you can see I was going this direction, and that's fine. I can keep going that direction. You can go this direction too, doesn't matter. So I started that direction. Now when I got down to the belly, just anatomically for me, it's easier to go this way, so I'm going to do this way. It doesn't matter which way you go. It's going to come off either way. So I'll go over this again on the other side, but I've kind of done the side. I'm to the belly. I've got kind of some butt roll here, and we talked about going this way. Now that I'm to the legs, I'm actually going to start going down the legs. Let's see. Maybe the best way to show you is to actually come up this way. So I'm going to do the top on this side. Again, folding that over so you can see what you're doing. So when I come over to this side, again, I find it easier just for me being right-handed instead of going this direction. Now I'm going to go this way. The other suggestion when you shear is it's more of a float. You should be floating through there. And now I found the bar. Floating through there. You shouldn't be having to put much pressure on there. Something's wrong if you're putting a bunch of pressure on there. So it's more of a floating kind of action. I'm not smashing it to the sheep, and I'm holding it kind of parallel to where she is. Now I'm to the spot you got to be a little more careful. You got an armpit here, and you got a flank back here. So sometimes I'll pull that wool off so I can see what I'm doing. This is probably the most common place that I cut is that armpit, just because there's a lot of flabby skin there. So what I'm going to try and do is keep my forward to backward motion to get this part. Sometimes I'll pull this forward, and then when I do that leg, I'm going to come down the leg. So I'll pull that forward. And then when I get back to this flank, that belly comes up this way, and this is another place that people tend to catch. So usually I stop here and start coming down the leg so I can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to turn my clippers to the inside and do the front of the leg. Okay, so now I can see where I'm at, and I can guide that clippers right through that flank and not cut her there. And then I can come back and finish doing towards her belly, towards her leggy parts back here. Typically what I try to do to try and prevent cutting off a teat is I get up underneath here and I look for that thing so I can watch it while I'm cutting so then I can avoid it. So I'll pull the skin forward so that I can see. Here's another super important part not to cut. We've got this big ligament tendon right here. Be very careful with that. Sometimes people will come down this butt and catch that. That is really bad. So sometimes I'll turn around and come this way, go up that, go up the inside of it, go up the outside of it. So I've got that isolated so I'm not going to cut it. Go down the legs. All right, now we're going to get to this tail. Best thing that I found to do is grab the end. Now the part that gets cut for me the most is this caudal tail flap right here. So I never clip this way because that's going to cut it with no problem. I'm going to keep cutting this way. Even when I get rid of this, I'm going to come down so that I'm not going to cut that. Use the tail as a handle. Move it out of your way so you got a flat surface to work with. And again, another lady bits, we don't want to do anything with that. Sometimes what I'll do, it's a little complicated because of the tail, and sometimes what I'll do is just stick my hand right there, then go around it. She doesn't really appreciate that, but sometimes you can just stick your hand right there so that you can move things away and shear around that. Okay, so we got pretty much this side done. Let's talk about how to do the front end. So this stand in particular makes it a little more complicated because you can't shear down the neck. If it's one of those stands where their head is in there, usually what I do is start right up here, shear down the neck. This one I kind of have to shear forward to this and then start shearing backward just because of where the stand is. Down on the leg though. There's that armpit again that we're going to watch. Okay, a couple more places that you have to be a little careful is right here in the front of that armpit. It's got the same thing. So you can either take a hand and move this back so it's tight, or you can move this out so it's tight. And then we're going to talk about how to get underneath that leg too. Alright, so best way to get underneath that leg is to try and do everything you can with her standing, and then we'll move the leg. Alright, so when I do this side, grab with my left hand, we're going to pull it up and forward. Just like that. So then on the head, again, we got this horns, we've got this trimming stand, we got all kinds of problems. Ears, all kinds of things. You really just have to take it nice and slow and know where you're at. I like to come down the nose first. I know, you hate that. I know. Okay. The other place you can easily cut is under the chin right here. So that's why I like to crank that head back. Again, coming down with that tight skin. Whoa, sweetie. So then, since she's turned this way, I'm going to try and do the back of her head, keeping her ears forward. All right, so now I'm at the most problematic place for this stand because that thing kind of blocks you from where you're at. So sometimes you can open it up, it will stay there. Okay, before I finish on this other side that you can't really see, how about we do more questions? Anybody have any other questions, concerns? What's that? So these blades, since she's washed, never gonna have any buildup on them. If they're gummy, they start to get that gum on the back. I'll literally take my fingernail. Well, you can see a little bit of it coming off there. Take my fingernail and just get that off of there. Never put water on them. If you're gonna try and get that stuff off of there, I would rather have you take a whole bunch of that oil and a toothbrush and scrub it that way. I've seen people take these and like stick them in a bucket of water and turn them on to try and clean it. Do not. Just ruins your blades that way. I never clean my blades. I don't. It's kind of like a cast iron. I'll get the gum off them, just the big chunks, but I won't ever wash them until it's time that they need to be sharpened or replaced. Yeah, I just leave dirty blades on all the time. Yep. The blades. So it really depends on what sheep you're doing. She is going to dull up blades really quick because she has no lanolin in them to keep them naturally greased. Honestly, I probably should grease them again right now. I can get probably, I don't know, my straps have a lot different of fleece. They're very oily. I can probably do 20 sheep on a pair of blades. Again, depending on the sheep. If your blades are set correctly, they should not dull quickly. So the bevel, this is the bevel that you do not want. This piece, like this, is probably set almost too far. You want it to be this way, not that way of the bevel. Yep, so usually what I do is make sure, typically if everything's straight on the back and you feel like everything's square, you should be fine, but you don't want the cutter to come out past on either side of the comb.
If you do cut
That never happens. Yeah, if you do cut them, yeah. Very rarely does it happen when I cut them. No sheep has ever died from being cut. It'll be fine. If it's a small cut, it kind of depends what it is. If it's a chunk, how about we do that, sister? If it's a chunk out of them, spray it with a little like iodine, something like that. If it's a flap, like if they catch it but don't take the whole thing off, I would cut that flap off. If it's a flap that you think, like I've seen them flap the neck like that before, I put stitches in that. Depends how bad it is. I mean, sometimes they'll bleed what you think is a lot. They'll be fine. Ears bleed like crazy because they're your head. But most of the time, the lanolin in there helps seal that up. And I think a lot of times the more you monkey with it, the worse it's going to be. Just let the body do its thing. In the summertime, and I guess this was kind of my last point after I get her sheared, my other very important thing, fly spray. Oh my God, these things can get bit up so bad, so quick. So after we shear, not necessarily like the fly zap that I have, but we either do pour on or some sort of fly spray, longer acting fly spray before I turn them out in the pasture.
Do you ever see, this is off topic a little bit, but do you ever see them get lice or mites?
So I do not. The bigger thing that I see is actually heel mites. Down here. So usually I use Dectomax. That's my favorite. There's all kinds of different things that people will use for that. Sulfur sprays, and there's a Prolate or something too. So there's lots of different. I do not. Nope. But the stuff that I was just talking about, the longer acting fly spray, a lot of those topicals have lice and tick protection in them too. So when you throw them out in the pasture, they're protected against that. The other important part to remember on when you're using that stuff, this is the best time to do it. That absorbs into their skin. It doesn't sit on top. So you can use it on sheep that have fleece, but it's not going to work as well because the stuff doesn't have anywhere to go. Yeah. It doesn't go systemic, but it works better when they're... Yeah. I do. Yep, which is why... Yep, you can feel the back of these. If they're warm to the touch, you're okay. If you do this and you're like, hot damn, you got a problem. And you either have the tension set too tight, you're not using enough oil, or you just have a like extremely problematic, dirty fleece. Some of these fleeces will get like, not in Iowa, we don't have this problem, but sand in them is horrid on your blades. Horrible. So it just depends on the sheep that you're shearing. I've sheared lots of different brands of sheep, different kinds of sheep. So there's lots of variation. Yeah. Yeah. No, Ultra Boss, that'd be a good example. There's some other in that category. Yeah, Ultra Boss is fine. Yep. Yeah. We use kind of I don't know, it's just a generic permethrin product that the farm store has. Not anything fancy. Luckily, those still work for the most part, especially the external parasites. We don't have like resistance for external parasites like we do for internals. So those will still work most of the time. Nope, I just use the Ultra Boss. Yeah, I just have that fly spray because it's the show sheep fly spray. Ultra Boss, I would never put on any of your show sheep because it absorbs dirt. Like you can see animals who've been poured, you see the dirt line on them. That's not the chemical, that's the dirt sticking to the ingredients that are in there. And that would not look great, and it doesn't wash out. When we were in England the last time at Black Nose Beauties, some lady, I don't know what products they have over there, but they said it's some sort of like lice product. All of her sheep were pink. Yeah, I'm like, I guess you weren't planning to come to the show, but I don't know. They were pink. It stained them pink. It was weird. So. Yeah. It doesn't look good. Like for the general appearance part of it, it's just if it's sheep out in your pasture, who cares? Your neighbors probably think it's funny, but When you're talking about show sheep, it's probably best to not use that kind of stuff. But the Prozac or LD44Z, this is just like a dairy, I think it's the dairy aerosol, and it says it's supposed to be used as like a fogger. I'll still put it on them, put it on the sheep. There's another one called Buzzkill that like a lot of the clubland people use. A lot of them say you're not supposed to spray them directly on the sheep. I do. They're fine. I spray it on myself too, so I'm mostly okay. So there's a lot of rules that get broken. Anything else?
Do you get like all of the wool off, like even up here?
Mm-hmm. I'm a little OCD about that. Like my husband gives me a really hard time because I'll be shearing brood ewes on the stand, and I'll like this bothers me. The stripes bother me. I'm just trying to get it off, but that bothers me, and I'll go back and like I would be a horrible shearing contest because second cuts are a big thing on a fleece, but it bothers me, and I have to look at them. And my husband, every single time, he goes, "It's not like we're taking them to Louisville. That's where all the purebreds go for the big national show, and they've got to look their best. Like they're just going to the pasture. They're not going to Louisville." So
for show,
yeah.
Would you trim those lines off?
So for show, you're never going to see these in 5 to 6 months when they grow out. So you would not have to. Nope. Nope. And unless you really want them to look beautiful in your barn. Yep. And her destiny is to go out to the pasture and get bred. So I may or may not fix that.
Some of the judges earlier were saying they actually trim
Yep.
the feet with the shears.
Yep.
What's the difference between doing that?
Yeah. So what they're trying to do, we have to be a little careful on how we talk about that because they're saying that the sheep needs to be completely shorn every 6 months. And I don't know if anybody's seen Jamie's video with him hand trimming around the legs and leaving a little bit on the bangs like that. You have to be really careful because you cannot leave this much. If you leave this much, we're going to know because that wool's going to be dead by the time 6 months comes. It's going to look horrible. It's not going to match the body. So I think the reason that what he's saying is the leg wool doesn't grow quite as fast as the wool on the body. So if you leave just a little bit on there, it'll match better. But you have to take, and I've trimmed lots of sheep in my life, and you take those clippers like that, and you have to make sure you get every piece of wool. You can't leave part of it long. You have to very consistently cut it like that, or it's not going to grow back right. I say most people are still here just shearing them. Yeah, just some differences for show sheep versus a sheep in the pasture. You would never do that. So, all right, should I finish shearing her? I could leave her like that and put her back in the pen. I'll see if I can get her down here. Yeah. I probably should put some lube on my blades, though. As we already mentioned, there's never too much oil, not an option. You just keep putting it on. She's kind of being a brat about being back by her tail, aren't ya? What is your deal? Thank you. She's being naughty. Okay, thank you.
How long would it be if you didn't dock it?
Her tail would probably be down here if I didn't dock it.
Okay, so was that like 6 inches?
So usually when I dock, I actually set him up and I grab a hold of the tail and I find where the hawk is and I go a little bit higher. Because on each lamb it's different as to how much you leave and how much you take.
So it's distance from the hawk, right?
Yeah. So, but you don't want it rocked right at the hawk. You want her wool at 6 months to be at the hawk. So that's, see where, and that's 6 months of growth will be at the hawk.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing that I sometimes do at home is get out the hand trimmers and do this around here. I'm not going to do it today because she's kind of being witchy about it, but sometimes I'll get that out of there because that really tends to mat pretty tight. You can use regular scissors, that's fine too, or they make these tiny little dog clippers, like battery operated dog clippers that I use at my vet clinic. Works great to do around horns. So, she look all right, looks good.